Welcome and thank you for joining us for Supporting Gifted Learners. My name is Amy Davis. I'm part of the Gifted team in Pennsylvania, which includes Shirley Moyer, who is the Gifted Support Person at the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and joined today by Patrice Semachek. And we're going to start here by introducing ourselves. So I work for the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, which is located right outside of Pittsburgh. And half of my job is working as the Western Pennsylvania Gifted Liaison, working with Shirley and Patrice to provide gifted support and gifted training across the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm going to let Patrice introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Patrice Semachek. I work out of the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit just outside of Philadelphia. Half of my job is also gifted. And so I get the pleasure of working with Amy and Shirley on all things gifted here in Pennsylvania.
So we're going to talk with you today a little bit about supporting your gifted students in your district. And so this is sort of the agenda of our presentation. How does your district support a differentiated curriculum that incorporates advanced, conceptually challenging, in-depth, distinctive, and complex content for gifted students? Our next question is, how does your district provide access for students in a variety of best practices to include acceleration, enrichment, and in-depth investigation? And how can your district create opportunities for the range of perspectives and talents in your classrooms to be appreciated and leveraged to improve learning for all? And as we talk, we're going to share with you lots of resources that you can use in your schools, share with your regular ed and your gifted teachers.
So our first key component here is, how does the district support a differentiated curriculum that incorporates advanced, conceptually challenging, in-depth, distinctive, and complex content for gifted students? So why is this important? We know that differentiation is the use of whole group, small group, and individual-based tasks that are based on content and student needs. It's valuing and planning for diversity in the heterogeneous settings that most of us have our students in. It is very student-focused. We know that we are working towards providing differentiation, and that's not the equivalent of more work. We're looking at changing the way in which we are providing support for our students, not giving them more work. So differentiation, again, is grounded in the understanding that instruction and curriculum encourage learning growth when instruction is directly tied to the specific assessed needs of students. When not preparing for differentiation, districts tend to provide more of the same work that's not at the student's level. They also provide instruction through one delivery method, or they provide one way of differentiating understanding. Oftentimes, districts spend a lot of time providing professional development on differentiation for our students with special needs, and that learning is not often transferred into our students with higher needs. So how do we go about differentiation? We can differentiate our content, our process, and our product. When we're differentiating our content, we're talking about looking at what facts, vocabulary, terms, concepts, and other information that students should really learn. What insights or principles, big ideas, or ahas should students walk away with, no matter what? What skills should students attain? These things like thinking skills, skills in the discipline, organizational skills, should our students be walking away with when we're talking about the content that's in all of our classrooms? When we're differentiating our process, we are looking at teaching the same skills, but in a way that are reaching kids at different levels. So they're breaking them into smaller groups, they're providing instruction in different ways, and they're going to be varying activities that students can use to master concepts being taught. Teachers can also, again, break them into smaller groups or allow them to work independently in groups of 1 or 2. I apologize for moving forward too fast. Differentiation of product. When we're looking at differentiating our product, how can we allow our students to show what they know in different ways? So when they're differentiating their product, they're assessing the same skills, but they're really differentiating how they can turn in their work. So for example, they can turn in a written project, or they can do something orally, they can create a video or things like that. They're still assessing what students know, but giving them different options to show what they know. Some questions for districts to consider are, does the district provide specific training to all teachers on differentiation for gifted students? Does the district have a continuum of services for options for differentiation at all grade levels? Do the staff understand that differentiation for gifted students is not more work, that it is different work? So thinking about this, how is your district supporting these kinds of modalities? Is it explicitly planned for, or is it something that's an afterthought? How much training have your teachers had for differentiating students at the higher end of spectrum? So those are some things to continually think about. Here is a huge list of resources that you will have access to at the end of the presentation. We have created a differentiation mini PD. It's about 10 minutes. We have a lot of resources here for differentiation for advanced learners on a Padlet, a fabulous article by Janie McCauley, another really great article from ASCD, and then finally an article on differentiating for gifted students by the Davidson Institute.
So our key component 2 is how does the district provide access for students in a variety of best practices to include acceleration, enrichment, and in-depth investigation. And as part of Chapter 16, those PA regulations for gifted education, acceleration, enrichment, or a combination of both are the only service delivery options that are mentioned for gifted students. So how is your district providing that to your students? And Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in the silent epidemic said that 88% of high school dropouts had passing grades, but dropped out due to boredom. It's imperative that we recognize the unique needs of our gifted students and that we provide them with enrichment or acceleration that they need in order to excel and thrive in school. Just think about it. These students are going to be our future leaders, scientists, teachers. So we want to make sure that we are meeting them and appropriately enriching or accelerating the students. So GIP annual goals and the short-term learning outcomes, those should be developed based on the individual student's academic strengths. Based on those strengths, the goals should be written so that they're attainable and that they'll allow them to be challenged and grow in their strength area. Gifted students, they're gifted 24/7, so they should be provided differentiation within their regular education classrooms. And how are you challenging those students? And acceleration, there are over 20 different ways to accelerate students. And we're going to provide you with some of those resources that you can share with your gifted and your regular education teachers on acceleration and enrichment. So we want to provide you with some questions to consider for your district. Does the district have an acceleration policy? While school districts are not required to have a policy, it is best practice to have one. And there is a lot of research around the benefits of acceleration for students. We're going to provide you with some of that research, and you can always reach out to us as well if you'd like more information about that. Does the district have a procedure for applying credits and grading for students who are accelerated? So consider a middle school student that your district has accelerated. They're strong in math, and they were accelerated into a high school math course. Does your district have a procedure in place for applying those credits for that student? Will they get credit, high school credit, for taking a class in middle school? Those kinds of things should be considered when accelerating your students and making sure that their future classes are mapped out and that everyone, including their family, the student, and the school district personnel, are aware of how the acceleration will look moving forward. Does the district have a continuum of service options for enrichment at all grade levels? Chapter 16 for gifted students covers all school age students. So you should have enrichment options available for K through 12. And does the district align GIEP goals and short-term learning outcomes to PA state standards in ELA, math, and/or science? So looking at the GIEPs that you have for students in your district, are the goals and short-term learning outcomes that have been written for those students, are they aligned to the standards in ELA, math, and/or science? And as I promised, we have some resources for you. So these top two Padlets, the Gifted Teacher Padlet and the Administration Padlet, are full of information related to Pennsylvania that Patrice, Shirley, and I have put together. They include who you can contact, some great Twitter feeds that you might want to follow, and some other articles that are interesting. This Strategies to Support Learners. Padlet is a great resource of information that we've had a group of teachers submit their resources to. And then we have an Acceleration Mini PD, which is just a short little professional development overview of acceleration and includes all those different types of acceleration that I was talking about. And then the National Association for Gifted Children have published different parent tip sheets. There's about 20 or so of these tip sheets, but there's one on acceleration that you could print out and share with parents if it's something that they have questions about. And then you can check out the other tip sheets that are available as well on NAGC's website. The research out there related to acceleration shows how important it is for students. And so the Acceleration Institute at the Bell and Blank Center, they're out of the University of Iowa, has a lot of that research on their website. And then they have some reports that they have published over the years, and you can have access to all of that through that link onto their website. We also have an enrichment mini PD that talks about what is enrichment, what types of enrichment can you provide. And then there's a tip sheet for enrichment as well that's provided by NAGC, and you can find that at that link.
Any of the PDs or mini PDs that you see on our resources, feel free to copy the link and share those with your teachers. They're there for you to access at any point, or do little mini micro PDs with your staff at any point. Finally, our third key component is how can districts create opportunities for the range of perspectives and talents in your classroom to be appreciated and leveraged to improve learning for all. So why is this important? We know that our gifted students demonstrate a greater maturity in some domains over others, and they develop asynchronously. So they might be at a greater risk for some kinds of specific social emotional difficulties if their needs are not met. We know that our young people also struggle in a lot of areas of things like perfectionism. They have a heightened awareness of things. They tend to be anxious about a lot of things. They stress over a lot of things. They have a hard time with peer relationships, and they definitely struggle with some concerns with identity and fit. Parents, adults, and caregivers in their lives need to stay in tune with their specific children's needs to help shape them provide them with a strong framework for their social emotional health. Research is showing that children who have a strong SEL component or competency are 50% more likely to graduate from high school and have a full-time job by the time they are 25. They are also twice as likely to earn a college degree. And research is also suggesting that children with strong SEL skills have more friends, feel more connected to school, and really want to do well. So how do we do this? We can ensure access to peers with similar interests, abilities, and drive. They don't necessarily have to be labeled as gifted. There are a lot of advanced learners that fall into this category. So encouraging our young people to intermingle with students who have similar interests, abilities, and drive is really beneficial to them. Providing services that are informed by the best possible evidence base, and really looking at creating environments that provide students with safe and respected classrooms that are unafraid of failure and are comfortable. A lot of our young people struggle with the word failure, and we as educators can continue to increase their understanding of how we learn by teaching them about how the brain learns and really talking about having a growth mindset. Oftentimes our gifted or advanced learners have come to learn that they can get things correct the first time. And so when they reach a roadblock, tends to be around 4th, 5th grade, or at the end of middle school when they're heading to high school, or once they hit high school. A lot of our young people haven't learned how to study because they haven't had to. They feel like anytime they make a mistake, they are completely a failure or they are no longer gifted. And so the more we can continue to increase our social emotional learning for our advanced and gifted learners, the better. We can do that through promoting intrinsic motivation, not letting the grades speak for themselves, letting our young people move beyond having that 100% or that A being the best possible thing for them. By looking at their student interest and allowing them to have some time in class to dive into that, to really do some research and figure out who they are, letting our young people understand that when they fail at something, that is their first attempt in learning, and that our brains really do learn more when we have to put some practice into things. They're not learning anything if it is rote and super easy. So we're looking at ways of doing this. You can do this through performance-based assessments, where students will have some voice and choice and they're creating authentic products, looking at some ways of incorporating a safe environment, providing opportunities for them to fail in that safe environment before they leave our educational K-12 system, gives them a safe place to provide access to that failure, so to speak. And then allow our students to display and share their interest in class. Students should have opportunities and options when demonstrating their understanding, using things like instructional playlists and things like that. Let them choose and give choice and voice to what they're trying to learn. Gifted students should be paired with a mentor if you have access to them who have similar interests and can offer support. Gifted students should not be used as a classroom tutor, because that does tend to offset their social emotional learning as well, because they feel like their job is now to teach students. Instead, we pair them with someone who is at a similar level if possible. Students should be encouraged to seek extracurricular activities and enjoy time with their peers, and they should be encouraged to self-advocate for their needs. We're saying self-advocate for their needs. That should not be a goal on the GIEP, and it is not the student's responsibility to self-advocate for their needs. It is something that we as educators can provide instruction on so that our young people can advocate for themselves. It's not their job to advocate for themselves. So some questions to consider when you're looking at social emotional needs for our gifted students is, does the district provide access to peers with similar interests, abilities, or drive for our gifted students? This doesn't have to be something that's done at the same grade level. It can be a grade or two above. It can be outside connections that are brought in, especially at the secondary level, introducing people to our gifted students who are in careers that might be of interest to them, to be peer models for them. How does the district provide safe and respectful environment to all students, making sure that all of our young people are included and feeling like they are a part of the community? Third, does the district provide professional development to all staff on the social and emotional needs of gifted students? Really looking at the asynchronous development. We know that our gifted kids can be really advanced in ELA, math, or science, but their social emotional learning could be at a chronological age level. So their academics could be a grade or two above, but they could be at the chronological age or even lower, depending on how they're developing asynchronously. So we got to make sure that we're providing professional development for our teachers so they understand just how differently our young people develop. And then finally, what mental health services does the district have in place? So what kinds of things are there to support our young people when they are struggling with their mental health? So here are a few resources that we have here. CASEL has some excellent resources for educators providing equity using social emotional learning. Stephanie Newitt wrote a really great article on asynchronous development if you want to learn more about that. ASCD has a fabulous article about mindfulness resources supporting the emotional needs of our gifted kids. Mindfulness is a really great practice for a lot of our young people to really start grounding themselves in where they're at. The CASEL framework is a fabulous resource. If you're not familiar with it, I suggest you go there. And then how do our kids develop social emotional, written by Gail Post, is a great article as well.
So we provided you with a lot of resources today where you can go and look up some things that you can use in your district. I also wanted to share how you can get support through your intermediate units. If you go onto PDE's gifted website, you'll see that there's a regional network, and each intermediate unit in the state has identified a gifted liaison, and they're your first line of defense. So if you have a question about gifted education, we encourage you to call your intermediate unit gifted liaison. But Patrice, Shirley, and I are also here to help. So if you have any questions or you need anything, we have a quarterly newsletter that we send out. We also provide statewide webinars, and we do a lot of gifted training. So if you need anything, please reach out and ask us. And don't forget to submit your attendance for this session using that Google form there. And our exit code for this session is 95824. And we thank you for joining us.